Hello, my name is Alex Dobray. I'm a serious victim of psychiatric crime committed over a long term. Um, when I was younger, I had a lot of difficulty in school. I had a lot of problems studying. I had a lot of distraction problems, which were characteristically, I think, serious learning problems that perhaps were genetic or other things. I had done remedial classes and had a lot of difficulty. Um, I never did well in school, was sleepy in class and did preparation classes at different points in time during my childhood. The chaotic aspect of it was that my family was scared of the consequences eventually of their sibling becoming more aware and more a part of the family as an organism, as a life organism. I would isolate myself in ways such as sit at an open table in a restaurant rather than a table for four, with one person occupying it. Children are generally aware of a family home, their parents, and family socially as life organisms. If I were to speak, it was never with a group or even superficially in relative context, or I would suffer distinct forms of bondage or slavery symbolism that were particularly utilitarian. And I think that's something distinctly genetic or dealing with mana. And I think mana is a key word that I'd like to introduce. And throughout this short video, I'll try and elaborate. But again, particularly utilitarian and anatomically associated or directed as deprivation of freedom. The idea of treatment for attention deficit disorder, except for being put in preparation classes, was never suggested until I was a young adult, at which time I had been introduced to genotoxic medicines or major tranquilizers, which had served to mask very serious learning problems in the context of anatomy, or what is now, an advanced learning disorder. I would like to say that the persons originally who were claiming to have treated me were more or less carrying out a practice that was an occultist practice that my family was practicing. I think it had largely to do with, I guess, what's referred to family conflict or religion prevailing in a person's community. Under the current international law of disabilities, or specifically the UN Declaration of Human Rights implemented into the subordinate legislation, um, religion prevailing in a person's community cannot of itself be reason for hospitalization, nor can family conflict or nonconformity. But nonconformity has to be defined in advance or it should be interpreted. And that's not law, that's intent. Um, I suffered a lot of, I guess, alienation. There was a lot of problems at home. I think my first instance of parents alienating me was with a group that was called Portage in Prévost, Quebec. It was a small detox center that is actually sorry, it started out in Aurora, Ontario, which is the was the adolescent detox center. I later was moved to Prévost. Um, they have supported, I guess, very wealthy people from Italy, from Milan, which I think was called Batula, and very wealthy families whose siblings or friends or partners had addiction problems. They paid the Milan Center, and they would carry out their therapy in Montreal. Um, the program was really sketchy. I was really slow as a young person. I had a lot of trouble learning. I was easily influenced and conned. The Portage people really had a lot of problems with drugs STDs, and very heavy drugs like cocaine and other things. I guess delinquency or vandalism associated with marijuana. That really wasn't the case with me. I think it's just a sense that the family essentially, abandoned the person into some inconvenience. I had no experience, very little experience. I'd smoked some marijuana as a young person, and I'm quite sure, persons severed with family members did that as well. They were not really, social. They were really into alienating. They were very self-important people. That one of which worked for Canadian International Development Agency, which is another agency that sort of has missing people, and other people are not missing all over the globe. Sort of like, I guess a lot of things. I know the most recent, the ad hoc convention, the war convention. I think it was last updated in the 90s. Implemented terms to protect members of the United Nations because they declared there was an uncontrollable amount of missing people in the world, and they had to create laws to protect members of the UN. I came from a small community. I grew up in a small community. I wouldn't say really, benefited or grew up. I think I was really more or less, a zombie state for the first 14 years of my life, or something like that. It was a small community in Quebec called Elmer. I think the area is called Gatineau now, which again has a lot of missing people, or people that are authorities, or people that have traveled to other countries in the 80s that just are, very domineering people that have been very bad in life and don't get jailed because they have social status, because the sense of what they've done is so horrible that it's not believable. And I think you can see the same thing in English psychiatry. I don't really believe I was misdiagnosed. In terms of, my views and CCHR, it's really criminal acts at extinguishing consciousness, which is basically taking somebody's life for for a manufactory. And a manufactory has distinctions because to have a manufactory, you have to alienate an individual from an entire society, and then enforce rules on that society, or perceptive persons, because everyone's perceptive. Human symbolism is really visible. Life is visible, and to make acts against that as symbolism is really criminal, because the intent is criminal. And if we look at major tranquilizers, in 1950, that the dopamine blockade didn't work, and dopaminergic systems start to fire rapidly, causing the dopaminergic cells to go into quiescence or inactivity, which is really bad. And another person, went into states of Parkinsonism, which is a disease characterized by the brain's inability to produce dopamine. Biochemical models, after the fact of the empirical evidence, allow, I guess, the World Health Organization or the Royal College of Psychiatry to allow abuse, essentially. Major tranquilizers are prescribed fairly frequently. It's the for-profit disease, psychosis and schizophrenia. The thing with psychosis and schizophrenia is, I think, on my parents' side, is they have no rights. All we got to do is get these professionals to extinguish the person's consciousness, and then they're not guilty. Now, that's a really bad thing. I noticed, I've been, around, I guess, quite a few, but in Squamish, there was another place in Canada that eventually had a number of missing people after. I know there's probably other persons that, have had trauma like that, or what I think is, not professionally, but what I think is PTSD. I mean, I'm experiencing people or unrelated twins or things that cause upset because they're persons that have been existing in a foreign country for a number of years who have lost their identity and their place of origin, and that causes me stress. I'm in a situation in hospitals that are run by courthouse junkies. They're ex-convicts, and I guess I guess most of these places were in England. I guess a lot of them used for immigration purposes or hiding EU nationals. And in 2000 in 2005, I 2003, I wanted to repatriate to the United Kingdom and start a new life. Because the Canadians were really into alienation, and there was something about distinction. There's something genetic about me, or they benefit, or it's that this person is not perceptive, or it's that perception comes from somewhere, and from private or obedience energy. And obedience energy is really something, is like a consensus distinction, pre-conventional, or really, it's not really, I think the intention is, existential political psychiatry, which wants to alienate an individual from society, and the society provides a service that they give to the customer, and the customer is red. And that's really not nice, because we all are people, and people are social, and that's illegal. I've been really, concerned about, I guess, energies or persons that are really, out there. I guess there's a lot of Canadians in the UK. I've had difficulties, and I really look at these difficulties as, I guess, occultism. The psychiatry has cults. Psychiatry thrives on the idea of practice or occultist practice. And some people have it, some people don't. And the people that don't, they feed. And if society tells them that that's what this person is for, it's something else. It's not evolutionary. But psychology tells us we're something we're not. But society isn't really anthropomorphic. Anyway, I guess I was abused a lot. What I experienced through the psychiatry was negation, military type psychiatry negation. In a lawsuit, ideally, a military psychiatrist is a good fundamental witness, because they know everything there is to know about military negation, whether it's verbal or otherwise. I was disciplined for having any form of diction, any form of meaning that would be communicating with another human person. And I guess it's a sort of, I think the terminology for this is really psychological warfare. And psychological warfare serves to destroy morale, destroy the person's dignity, and or the country's morale or belief system, which is somehow parallel, because really, in my case, there's a great deal of function or institutions providing autonomy, or I guess termed desacralization. I live in a small community in Essex where it's currently a struggle, and but that's not going to change, and or it might. But one thing I don't like is defamation, and defamation takes all kinds of shapes and takes all kinds of forms, because people are social, and most people can't help but be not social, and that's something else. So that's like I guess characteristic of mm, I guess a symbiotic instinct. Um, but in any event, you know, a symbiotic entity that is personified by age groups and other things are really occultist out there. It's like, I guess, a way to look at it is in genetics, or, we are what we eat, essentially, and thinking is a manifestation of being, and that can't be changed because life just goes on and on. Thinking is also a manifestation of identity. So in terms of somebody is sending energies out and trying to communicate or mystify, because mystification is ego. Right? The person has to build the person, and that deals with commerce and society. And I think in Glasgow, I used to go to the Firebird. I think I would order what is ordinarily drank type of scenario, and that was really morbid. It pains me to think of myself as a slow person that has trouble reading or thinking. It's more the sense of pain from physical, actual abuse that's a constant. In Britain, intangible acts become tangible once they are constant or practiced. Practice is linear. Linear is organized, or it's geographic. If we look at the internet on social networking, that's communicating with another person. But really, students say no, they're communicating with infrastructure and something else. You look at somebody wearing a mask, and they have a partner in their home, and the mask is saying, well, you don't have to listen to me because I'm not. But you can learn from desacralize. You can do whatever you want and try to communicate with this human person. You will not understand him whatsoever. It is sort of we don't take responsibility mask, or it's just a facade. And a facade is really has personality, and personality has constants and has masks that look like other people, or if I'm sad, it shows emotion. But sad people really, if you feel a bit elderly, they don't really, I think it's a sense of vitality and other things. But if you look at the games people play, everything is a motif. A person is smiling because they don't show, because they're smart, because they're vulnerable if they're not smiling. But I mean, that's just a play on words. If you look at people, and the problem and how to approach these things, is definitely the terminology and identifying the problem, and essentially, persons who are antagonists or instigators or causers, that are very, very much out there, and it is essentially the value of life, and the value of life is very important. It's very important, but it's approaching a person rather. It's rather sort of, I guess, bondage you might see in mummyism or something, because the person is casted and is presumed to have identity or mysticism, and in any event, which is essentially depersonalization, destruction of identity, destruction of home, destruction, distinct acts against home and individuality that are distinct linear acts that are, out there. And the MOD's got lots of freedom of information, things that everyone has the right to access. There's that called What Do They Know, which is available in the UK and probably all over the place, but it's a UK app, and you can ask the government anything you want as long as they have it, and they will publish it with your request, and it'll be available to everyone. And that also refers to software, directed energies, facts, because fact can't be beaten. People can be beaten, but fact can't be beaten. I'm a victim of life alienation. I've been attacked by a lot of different persons that were committing bondage, that were mean, vexatious, rude, manipulative criminals that not only are liable for fraud, but clinical fraud. Clinical fraud is actually criminal fraud. That's what it means, if there's an intent to do that. A careless person has an intent. I say, I wore a T-shirt yesterday, and the person writes down, he wore a smile the other day, or somebody says green or black, and it's like yellow, and yellow is really a bright color, but very linear color. But I guess only intelligent people know that. Psychiatrists have made my life miserable. Persons benefiting or getting a sense of pleasure from people being miserable are people that really need to stay away. And I could put a piece of 10-pound piece of garlic in my kitchen, and try and get demons to go away. But garlic doesn't do that. And physically, we know garlic doesn't get rid of demons or people, but it's symbolism, and it's there. You put it right. I can put it right out in the middle of the street. It doesn't work. So who does it work for? It doesn't work for me, because we like to believe we live in free countries, and for some people that's absolutely not true. For other people, it's absolutely not true, but in a way that is inalienable or inexorable, as much as superimposition of I guess different expressions that I think we can easily call social society. People do identify with each other. People do communicate with each other. People sitting in a restaurant are thanks to each other and have a good sense of what's happening in the proximity of a patio or restaurant. It's really symbolism. Those are social places. They can't be social places if liable. So, the other thing is persons that are antagonists that really are kind of cause disputes, that are not liable, and are really kind of I guess fuck off and in the face type of thing. And the other one's in another guy's phone. He's picking up the phone, he's putting it down. The other one's in the front staring and saying, "Damn fucking nigger." And I'm not prejudiced, and really that's not meant as arbitrary. That's basically a sense of this individual feeling a sense close to what I guess an abused ethnic group. I guess it's just absolutely wrong. And there is about, I think Jeffrey Burton said in 2005, there's quite a number of people going into the UK to a hospital. There is a lot of issues in the UK, and there's bound to be no solution. There's I put I had a cruising site on. and there were persons imposing localities and things on there, and they were pretty much voyeurism. Voyeurism is like really boring because, you know, if we look at normal, what's it, Orwell, I think it is, that everything is just is, and that's just because it is. Um, and you know, most people, you know, are just, you know, don't have, you know, privacy, and we look at the fiction of a superimposition of you know, of our government or the, you know, the NHS, which dope fiends. Dope fiends means, you know, this type of thing that is really needs a language for it, because it has to be dope. Uh, I mean, really, I think it's really some, you know, people up in the mountains know things, and other people know things, and you know, and we live in a world that is becoming more and more barren, and it's really difficult because most people don't want to admit that. People have depictions of death and paint death, and I think it's an ugly thing. Anyway, I particularly had difficulty with the province of Ontario. They were seeming to have dialect with court and judiciary bodies before the court, which essentially is communicating through the social spectrum with another person on the other end, which is communicating, you know, with dialogue, and then having a dialogue after, which was really, you know, a form of defamation and criminality, because really they're making a sort of deal with the court that they're going to benefit. They're going to have highly animate lifestyles, and they will be, you know, have a better life if they, you know, I guess, commit acts of destruction of justice or other things, criminal. In all of my life in Canada, I've never had one happy moment. I believe in good mood. Mood is good. Mood is positive because one doesn't have to have a reason to have a positive mood. But it's healthy to have a positive mood. Or happy, or felt happy, I would be able to survive. I don't have a reason to be happy. So the mind has to work itself to a way and has to problem solve. And as soon as it starts to problem solve, you know, it realizes, oh my God, these people were not helping me. They were not helping me to associate. They were helping themselves. They were committing civil acts against us human person as individuals, priding themselves on assault and arrogance. And, you know, solicitors were sort of creating little communities, you know, perceptive, linear, you know, sort of areas, which are sort of, you know, probably popular areas in their, you know, but they were committing offenses of defamation, forms of extortion, and threats, and were breaking the law and maintaining to society they had every right to do so. This includes action in Scotland. In Scotland, I had another sense of alienation, and really it's the Canadians. The Canadians came into the international circle after the 70s, promising to take Eastern or Europe out of inactivity. Inactivity is a nasty word. In 1950, inactivity there was a global state of inactivity in 1950, which is inactivity, or I guess empirically what they call no dopamine, or something like that. In one experiment, you know, the patients around one patient all had higher dopamine than the other patient, and they had more rights. And you know, they were, you know, had a mantra. They were found in this person doesn't belong, and they're going to practice on it in such a way that's going to enhance their health and their perception, and they're going to make a point of it. You know, just like, you know, that, and that's just it's really It's I think that's the term super consciousness, and I note on my webpage that the awareness at a young age is very important for young people. And if they don't become aware of the family or the family organism as a person or entity, they become alienated. And um, and that's really what collective or super consciousness, I think, is generally, I guess, and kinetics. Um, the one thing that bothered me a lot is persons using symbolism to hate or to assault a lot. Words like psychic or things like that, which is actually symbolism for communicating. A person who doesn't understand that, might go through a period where they don't understand that. But really, what psychic means physically is someone is missing teeth or missing a limb. It stops communicating, it stops sending psychic signals to the brain, electric signals to the brain, and the brain registers that there's a missing limb or there's a missing hand, or and in any event, I find it really offensive and arbitrary. If we look also at these filthy ESP things, is that the ESP sort of experiment tries to draw power and attention from the public, which is really, the seeds of Nazism unsown, because all people are strange to each other, and people are very vain and strange to each other, which is what the experiment goes to prove. And the control is not having dialect and understand what they have to do, and they're being paid whatever money it is, and what do they get? Popularity. The doctor generally assesses a patient, what it needs, what it wants, how he's going to benefit, and what can be done to benefit him or herself, and the way they want to go in life. That's called the assessor. The thing that I experienced is they didn't do that. They became very upset and punishing, assaultive, if this person had any, interest in different things. If it were into education, the education would start and then make a point that they tried to help the person, and then the book closed, and the zombie came back, which is really a personification, and um, a really unhappy person that won't go away.